to account. There was a system failure here.
What we need to do now is undertake the investigation, what the board is doing, to understand where those gaps are.
Stabbed to death at school, the killing of a 14-year-old boy, a victim of bullying, prompting calls for change tonight. As police continue their investigation into this week's killing of Devin Brackie-Selvi, there are questions about whether the teen was failed by the system and what needs to change in light of his death. As Lorenda Redekop reports, those questions were put directly today to the education minister.
Tears, grief, and a call for action. His mother says Devin Brackie-Selvi was bullied since the second day of school.
For a month, we've been trying to get this dealt with. They suspended the one kid, and then he was not supposed to be on school property, and then he showed up Monday on the school property.
That afternoon, Devin was stabbed to death in front of his mother. She says she arrived to rescue him from bullies.
When a 14-year-old dies at school, there's a failure somewhere in the system. Ultimately, somebody needs to be held to account on this.
This expert in anti-bullying says more action is needed. Police continue to investigate. A 14-year-old and 18-year-old are both charged with first-degree murder. The school board promises its own investigation.
It can't just be the school policing itself. We need somebody to come in and do a really comprehensive look at this and then come up with some solutions that everybody can learn from.
So far, the education minister would not commit to the province getting involved.
I will review the investigation's findings and contemplate action at that point once I've seen the report.
But he did say this.
We agree that there needs to be accountability when systems are not being met and processes are not being followed.
Devin's mother is frustrated at what now feel like empty words from the school.
Zero tolerance and zero bullying and everyone belongs, and it's not true. And no one's held accountable for it. It keeps happening.
And this reminder for parents of kids who may be the bullies themselves.
Listen to what the teachers and principal are saying about your child. Kids don't just start by knifing somebody in the schoolyard.
A hope that this tragedy will bring change. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
As you saw in Lorenda's story, hundreds of people gathered in Hamilton last night to honor the teenager. In the crowd was the boy's grieving mother. People were holding candles and signs against bullying. They were also urged to speak up if they see anyone being bullied.
If you see someone, that skinny little kid in the hall of school, on the corner, anywhere they may be, and they're being bullied, we want you to go up to them and yell at the top of your lungs, "Stop!"
Devin's funeral will take place on Saturday. A woman is in critical condition after a stabbing in Scarborough this morning. It happened near Lawrence and Midland around 11:30. Police say they found the woman suffering from stab wounds. She was rushed to hospital. Police say the victim and suspect know each other, but so far no arrests have been made. The closing of a small restaurant on Queen Street has taken another twist tonight. The CEO of a well-known Toronto food chain has stepped in to help. Farah Morelli joins us now live from outside Sufi's. The story of Farah really has captured attention all over the world.
It really has, Shannon. When the family first announced that they were closing this restaurant permanently because of the death threats that they were receiving, it made international headlines from the Washington Post to the BBC. It really captivated a lot of people. Today, a happy ending of sorts. The doors behind me will reopen tomorrow. The Syrian refugee family that was the subject of these threats won't be running the restaurant themselves. Instead, a local businessman has stepped in to offer a team of managers to run the restaurant until the family feels safe enough to come back.
Until yesterday, it was thought that no one would walk through the doors of this small Queen West restaurant ever again. That changed today.
Mr. Faqih extended his support to us and kindly offered to keep Sufi's door open under his management until our family feels healthy and safe again.
Sufi's restaurant will reopen tomorrow with the help of Paramount Fine Foods CEO Mohammed Faqih. While the Sufi family deals with the death threats against them, Faqih will bring in a team to run the restaurant.
The Sufi will retain the ownership of this restaurant. They will receive all the profit. I really do not want anything from this other than making sure that this restaurant is open. The success of this restaurant has become a reflection of how welcoming we are as a society.
The threats against the restaurant stemmed from Al Sufi's son participating in a protest at a Maxime Bernier rally in Hamilton last month. This clip of protesters yelling aggressively at an elderly couple went viral. Alaa Al Sufi, the restaurant owner's son, was identified as one of the protesters. That's when the threats started, some against the family's lives. So earlier this week, the restaurant announced it was closing permanently.
The aftermath and public reaction to our decision was beyond what we imagined. We received hundreds of heartfelt messages from people all over Canada, offering their support and solidarity.
It's that support that Al Sufi says prompted him to reconsider the closure. But he said today he still fears for the safety of his family.
Restore their confidence and come back to run their business.
Excuse me, sir?
As we tried to interview Mohammed Faqih, a heckler standing outside the restaurant yelling anti-immigrant slogans interrupted us.
We don't want to have people coming over here behaving like these people. Behave like Canadians when you arrive.
His comments prompted strangers to step in.
It's deplorable, and it needs to be stamped out. This hate is terrible. These people shouldn't feel in danger to run their business in Canada. It's so un-Canadian.
Despite the messages of hate, Al Sufi said today he doesn't want to see anyone charged for the threats against his family.
No, I don't want. I ask for their forgiveness, and definitely I forgive everyone. So we need to just to promote love. We don't want to emphasize hate.
Shannon, you might remember yesterday we actually spoke to the son of that elderly couple you saw at that Maxime Bernier rally that were trying to attend but being yelled at by protesters. And what the son told me yesterday was actually heartbroken to see what was happening to the restaurant. But he also said that he hadn't received an apology from the Al Sufi family for their son's attendance at that rally. But I did talk to him again this morning, and what he told me is that he received a call from Mr. Al Sufi, the owner of this restaurant, and he called him a fine gentleman, an asset to this country. And he actually said that he's trying to make time to bring his parents to the restaurant to meet the family so that they can make peace and break bread together.
Yeah, and all the best to them as they reopen. Thanks, Farah.
There's a lot of homeless people.
It doesn't provide for a welcoming environment for outsiders to come into downtown Brampton.
The root issue are people are really facing really serious social issues, and how do we increase service?
Brampton is a growing city, but with progress comes a new problem. There's a shortage of affordable housing, and the homeless population is on the rise too. Coming up, we'll tell you how one city councillor is trying to make things better. The province is pledging to put millions of dollars into new mental health initiatives.
1 in 5 people will experience, as noted by Robin, a mental health challenge in their lives. And 70% of mental health issues begin during their childhood and teenage years.
That's Education Minister Stephen Lecce making the $40 million announcement. It includes permanent funding for close to 200 mental health workers in secondary schools. According to the province, 1 in 5 students in grades 7 to 12 say their mental health is fair or poor. Parents across Ontario organized a walk-in this morning at more than 700 schools, urging the provincial government to reverse cuts to education.
The most important job that we have in our whole society is that of teacher, and we don't want to lose any teachers because that's how the future happens.
We've seen the provincial government from its first days in office take money out of our system. $1.4 billion was removed last spring. So we're calling for a reversal to those cuts and a strengthening of our system.
The government says the cuts would save the province $2.8 billion over 5 years, but the province's Financial Accountability Office said public schools would lose around 10,000 teachers over the same period, and class sizes would go up. The walk-in comes after the Canadian Union of Public Employees reached a last-minute deal Sunday night, avoiding a strike. The province is now kicking in an extra $100 million a year for new funding to support staff jobs and a wage increase for more than 50,000 education workers across Ontario.
I'm really proud of the education workers that stood up for our schools, and I think it's rallies like this that let them know that families have their back is going to be so important as teachers head back to the bargaining table.
So, elementary and high school teachers have yet to negotiate new deals. Their contracts expired at the beginning of the school year. They will head back to the bargaining table with votes being held throughout the month. The Ford government has made little to no progress towards achieving its targets for cutting greenhouse gas emissions. Those findings coming from a new report by an environmental watchdog. Our Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley is here. Mike, that doesn't sound too promising.
Shannon, this report looks at the plan that the Ford government unveiled last November, what they call their Made in Ontario Environment Plan. The government said that this plan could bring down carbon emissions without the need for carbon pricing. And the government promised to take 7 key actions to accomplish this. So take a look at this report card. It comes from Environmental Defense. And you'll see all these initiatives that are labeled no action or minimal action. Those add up to about 80% of the government's proposals for cutting emissions. And one of these would actually drive up the amount of greenhouse gases emitted in this province.
We're quite concerned that Ontario isn't taking its obligations seriously and is breaking its promise to reduce greenhouse gas emissions without a price on carbon.
Now, the timing of this report is one of the reasons why it's getting attention. We're in the middle of a federal election campaign with climate change and carbon pricing as a big issue. The Federal Conservative Party's environmental plan looks a lot like the Ford government's plan.
That's right. So what does the government have to say about all of this?
Well, a spokesperson for the Environment Minister gave me a list of nearly 20 things that the government's doing from its environment plan, but the vast bulk of them have nothing to do with actually reducing greenhouse gas emissions. These are things like appointing a special advisor for Ontario parks. So I asked again, what has the government done about lowering emissions? Well, it turns out that pretty much all of the moves are in their very early stages. So here's a statement from the Environment Minister, Jeff Urick. He says, quote, "We have been taking steps to lay the foundation for emission reductions that will continue to increase over the duration of our plan." So when are we going to know if this is having any effect? Got to wait and see. It's going to be a couple of years because the stats on actual carbon emissions have a 2-year lag time.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Well, something else out of that report Mike was just talking about is a major drop in electric vehicle sales after the PCs scrapped the rebate. We'll have more on that part of the story coming up for you at 6:30. Colette Kennedy is here now with our first look at the forecast. I feel like we've been getting spoiled all week. It's been so beautiful out there.
I know. What did we do I don't think it was me, but somebody did.
Somebody did something good.
Yeah, that's right. And as we know, it's going to end sometime, but it's not ending yet. We still have tonight, and we've got tomorrow as well. And then things start to change over as this ridge of high pressure that's been protecting us, giving us a great big hug all week, is going to be moving off. And as it does, that's when the showers will start to move in, and temperatures are going to come down a little bit too. Not really so much yet. I mean, this is pretty nice for evening hours as we're getting there closer towards 7 o'clock. Just a little after 6, of course, but we're seeing those temperatures holding in the mid-teens. Come on. And then a look at the satellite radar imagery. Very little to see here, and that's where we go with this. So still mostly clear overnight tonight. Temperatures will actually run a little on the mild side. Then it's late day tomorrow. We still have sunshine through the day. Late day, the clouds start to build in a little bit, and then it seems like this is starting to move a little more quickly than what it had seemed. So we'll say early morning, so probably 5 a.m. it starts to move into the GTA and pushes through, and by afternoon, Saturday, we're doing just fine. Things change, though, with those temperatures, and I'll get into those details coming up, Shannon, but just know tonight, 8, and tomorrow, 17 for the high.
Okay, so good in the short term. We'll take it. Thank you.
You got it.
We're all familiar with the issue of homelessness here in Toronto, but it can be a concern in smaller cities too, of course, including Brampton. It is dealing with a shortage of affordable housing. As Kelda Hewen shows us, one city councillor is hoping to do something about it.
In Brampton's Garden Square, this has become a familiar scene.
There's a lot of homeless people.
Letitia Lead owns a beauty salon nearby. She says she's seen a huge spike in the amount of people living on the street over the past year.
It's not safe. I work here until night and then I have to go home and I'm scared because you don't know who's following you.
Others say it's hurting the area's reputation.
Kind of sucks, you know, trying to build a business doesn't provide for a welcoming environment for outsiders to come into downtown Brampton.
Their concerns are being heard. Councillor Martin Medeiros says he's heard from residents who don't feel safe downtown. He's calling on Peel Region staff to address the problem.
How can we increase and have more of a police presence? But also there's the social aspect is how do we ensure, because we know those folks who are what we call, be it homeless or people facing addictions, they need those social services and they need those type of support.
And how many turkeys are you cooking? 40.
Ted Brown is the executive director of the Regeneration Drop-In Center, one of 2 places downtown that offer support to the homeless population. He says while those numbers have gone up,
Serious crimes are definitely down in this area.
and that's backed up by police statistics showing serious crime in downtown Brampton is down compared to last year. Brown says the big problem actually is
A lack of affordable housing. We have a 0% vacancy rate here in the city for bachelor-style apartments.
just down the street. Kemi King can attest to that.
I had to move out last month and I can't find a place.
Even though
I can afford it. I've got cash in my pocket.
I'm concerned for the businesses, but I still care about the people in the street. They need the help.
Peel Region staff are expected to present council with some solutions by mid-November. Kelda Yoon, CBC News, Brampton.
The battle for votes in Quebec takes center stage tonight in Gatineau. The 6 federal leaders will debate entirely in French. We are just 11 days away now from the election, and Quebec is still very much in play. Our Julie Van Duzen joins us now. Julie, what are you going to be watching for tonight?
Well, I'll be watching specifically for how Trudeau manages to adapt to this changing landscape we're seeing in Quebec. Trudeau was one of the leaders out today. He didn't say much. He was actually in a pumpkin patch with one of his kids, a nice little photo op before the not-so-nice bear pit session tonight. So he is still in the lead in Quebec, a very important province, Shannon, with 78 seats. But he's got a lot to worry about because the recent Léger poll has the Bloc Québécois nipping at his heels. The Bloc has a very popular leader with Yves-François Blanchet, and he's gone up 9 points in 1 week since the last French debate. So he's just 2 points behind Trudeau in Quebec. Trudeau at 31, the Bloc at 29. So I'm definitely going to be watching for those dynamics. So he's a sudden and a real threat, Blanchet is. Now today he was on the defensive because 4 of his candidates in Quebec posted some anti-Muslim tweets and videos, and Blanchet had to come out and apologize. So he will most likely be on the defensive about that. And just overall, a lot more scrutiny on the Bloc.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about the Conservative and NDP leaders?
Well, Andrew Scheer was a complete bomb in last week's French debate at TVA. By all accounts, his views, which are anti-abortion and pro-pipeline, clash with those of Quebecers. So for the most part, because it was in his second language, he certainly didn't do very well. But in the English debate a couple of days ago, he came out swinging at Justin Trudeau specifically, and he seemed to boost his stature a little bit. So he'll have to give a lot more of that. And now he's got to worry about the Bloc Québécois because Scheer has 12 seats in Quebec, and he's got to think that the Bloc is certainly competing for some of those seats too. So listen for words if you happen to be watching it for, you know, you're nothing but a separatist party with no power nationally and so on. You'll hear some of that. As for Jagmeet Singh, the NDP leader has 14 seats in the province. He's desperate to hang on to those. He's had a little momentum lately. So today he was talking big, saying, you know, I want to be prime minister. He outlined 6 urgent priorities that included things like pharmacare, dental care, lower cell phone bills. And he said, should I not become prime minister and it's a minority government, these are the conditions I would expect whoever wins to work with me to attain. Now, he doesn't mean Scheer. He does not want to work with Scheer. So let's assume he's talking about Trudeau. Take a listen.
My goal is to make sure in this election we cannot wait, and no matter what government you choose, I want Canadians to win. If you vote New Democrat, Canadians will win. We will fight for these 6 things and we will make them happen.
So this debate tonight, of course, takes place on the eve of some advance polls opening tomorrow, and of course on the eve of the long Thanksgiving weekend when people will be digesting politics along with their turkey, trying to figure out which way their vote will go for October 21st.
That's right, just 11 days to go. Thanks, Julie. That's our senior reporter, Julie Van Dusen in Ottawa.
The gas caught on fire, it went into the container, and it spewed like a flamethrower, and my wife was sitting right there.
A warning from this man about portable fireplaces and tabletop fire pits. His wife passed away after the ethanol used in a fire pot shot out of the container. Coming up, we'll tell you about Health Canada's push to get the industry to stop selling some models.
The weather update is brought to you by Train Extreme Conditions Testing. It's hard to stop a train, really hard. Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
A new warning tonight might have you heading out to the backyard. Health Canada says some portable fireplaces and tabletop fire pits can be dangerous and in some cases deadly. Diane Buckner has more on the frightening incidents known as flame jetting.
She was a real artist when she was young. She was good at doing almost anything. And
Jim McGorman's wife Judith died after a visit with neighbors. The host used ethanol to fill a fire pot, not realizing it was still burning.
the gas caught on fire, it went into the container, and it spewed like a flamethrower, and my wife was sitting right there.
That was 3 summers ago.
I did become very angry at the fact that this could occur, and especially when I started reading and learning about the fact that this is not new.
It's called flame jetting. The Ontario Fire Marshal has released this video to warn the public.
The people around, believing that the candle has gone fully out, reach for the fuel container and proceed to refill the ornament. When the new fuel is introduced, it ignites the vapors.
And it's happening more often as the ethanol fireplaces and fire pots have become more popular. This Toronto doctor died in June in a similar incident with burns to 95% of her body. In August, 2 women were seriously injured in Toronto. They're still in hospital. And just 3 weeks ago, another incident injured a young woman and her baby niece.
People aren't going to use these products perfectly every time.
Lawyer John McLeish has launched a $14 million lawsuit against the American ethanol maker on behalf of Jim McGorman.
We've got 7 cases in the office and
involving ethanol.
Involving ethanol, blowtorch incidences where someone was badly injured or killed.
Manufacturers argue that the devices are safe as long as they're operated and fueled properly. The company facing that $14 million lawsuit tells CBC News it's no longer active in the business. Diane Buckner, CBC News, Peterborough, Ontario.
I would never want to see another parent have to go through the pain that we have gone through by losing her.
Parents fighting for justice after their 24-year-old daughter died trapped in a house fire. She lived in an illegal rooming house. It had 8 residents and only 1 working smoke detector and 1 emergency exit. More on the legal battle and Toronto's rooming house problem is coming up. It's been 6 years since a deadly fire broke out in an illegal rooming house here in Toronto, trapping and killing a 24-year-old woman. Since then, her parents have been fighting for action, and now they're speaking out. It was November 2013 when the rooming house caught fire near College and Dufferin. Alicia Lemurs was in the basement suite. Her death prompted reviews by Toronto Fire and the city. This is what they found. The 2.5-story home had been subdivided into a basement suite. The main floor had 2 suites, as did the second floor. Then there was an additional 2 suites in a small loft. And for all of that, just 1 working smoke detector and 1 exit. There were bars on the basement windows. The landlord was fined $75,000. Lemurs' parents say that's not enough. They're suing the landlord for $5 million.
The government thinks that, if they fine him $75,000, that everything is okay. That's not okay. We lost our daughter. We lost a child. Somebody was killed that was trapped in a house that couldn't get out. I would never want to see another parent have to go through the pain that we have gone through by losing her.
The landlord did not speak with CBC News, but in a statement of defense, the landlord said Lemurs was aware of the layout and condition of her apartment. It is often some of the most at-risk people that live in these kind of rooming houses, and as you saw, they may be in grave danger. CBC News has compiled numbers from across the country that reveal just how many people die in rooming house fires. Kenny Nicholson is here to talk about those numbers. You've been going through it. You've also been sort of looking for solutions as well. But first, tell us, how big of a problem is it here in Ontario?
Well, here in Ontario, and these are numbers that we were able to compile from the Office of the Fire Marshal, between 2014 and 2017, there were 232 fires, and they killed 10 people. And the Toronto Fire Service, they've been grappling with this problem. They've also given us some numbers. They were recently given some expanded powers to deal with this issue. In 2017, the Fire Service, it ordered 44 rooming houses to make immediate fixes, and it closed 5. And in 2018, it ordered 30 to make immediate fixes, and it closed 2. We know they just closed another house last Friday.
Yeah, so obviously it's a problem, and I know as part of your work you've been talking to people looking for solutions.
Yeah, so we went to Winnipeg, and in South Winnipeg around the University of Manitoba, there is an immense crush on housing because of the university and the burgeoning international student population. You have houses that are single-family dwellings being subdivided, very much like in the Lemurs case. And so they've been trying to crack down on this and ensure that those students are safe. They've enlisted community block captains to keep an eye out on the different houses. The councillor that we spoke with has I tried to get people to report landlords. Often it's a cash economy to Revenue Canada, and because then she says, let the CRA deal with these people. And another thing she's doing is actually just personally making visits, knocking on doors. We went with her just as she showed us a house that she had shut down that had 15 mattresses in it for international students. She was trying to tell us about this success story. Turns out the house had already flipped again, and it was being used for 7 students. Here's Councillor Janice Lukes.
Here we are today, talking to a student, and there's 7 students living in there. So, like I said, it's a game of whack-a-mole. You feel bad for the students, right? They're living in the house. They're like steps from the university. But we know this house is not safe.
Now here it's a little bit of a different story. We know Toronto has this problem. Estimates from Councillor Gard Perks in Parkdale, he says, well, there's probably between 25 and 50,000 people in the city that are living in illegal housing, but not in his ward. He said over a 10-year period, they brought 100 rooming houses in line by forcing them to register. And they did this with sort of a carrot and a stick approach. They said, okay, we'll give you a different rate of taxation if you register with the city. Registering with the city means that you get annual inspections to keep people safe. Here's Councillor Gard Perks.
Every year there's an inspection, fire department, our building department, and our property standards department, and make sure that, your common areas are kept clean, your fire alarm works, you're not filling your backyard with garbage, a whole bunch of tests like that.
Now, he hopes that by the end of this year, the rest of Toronto is going to be brought in line with the Parkdale model. And we're going to have more on this tonight on The National. We're going to look at more solutions to this housing problem.
Good, and we'll be watching for that. Thanks, Katie.
You're welcome.
And you can find more of Katie's reporting on this story online on our website, cbcnews.ca. Today is World Mental Health Day, and advocates are pressing federal leaders this election to take more immediate, concrete action.
We are in the grips of a crisis around the need for more deeply affordable and supportive housing, a crisis in need to provide additional supports and enhanced services for those who are living with mental health, and of course, significantly more supports to address the opiate and addictions crisis.
They want $300 million a year to improve mental health services in Toronto. That's a target set out by the Mental Health Commission of Canada. They're also calling for a Mental Health Parity Act that would match dollar for dollar physical and mental health spending. The University of Toronto's student union supports the call to action after a student death on campus last week.
For too many students, our university is a harsh environment, and too many find it impossible to thrive. We need more services and supports. We need this investment, but we also need to change the culture on campus that has created this mental health crisis.
Advocates say that students at colleges and universities with identified mental health illnesses have more than doubled over the past 5 years. The province's major fiscal update is expected to be delivered in early November.
We are continuing on a prudent, purposeful path that will take us to budget balance by 2023, while still allowing us to make the important investments that are required for the services Ontarians rely on, and in particular for the infrastructure that we need for the future.
Ontario's finance minister there, Rod Phillips, speaking to the Canadian Club of Toronto this afternoon, saying that the province is on track to beat its previous 2019-2020 deficit projection of $10.3 billion. The fall economic statement will be released November 6th. We heard about it earlier in the show. Environmentalists are calling out the province for not living up to its promises to combat climate change. Last year, Doug Ford's government pledged to cut carbon emissions significantly by 2030. Now, a new report says we are way off track. Ali Chiasson has more.
It's a plan that represents a clean break from the status quo.
That's former Environment Minister Rod Phillips in 2018. Announcing the province's plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 2030.
It's a plan that balances a healthy environment and a healthy economy.
And this is...
I'm Sarah Buchanan. I'm the Clean Economy Program Manager here at Environmental Defence.
A watchdog group that says Ontario is way off track to meeting its targets.
So far, we haven't seen any meaningful steps to reduce carbon pollution and fight climate change in Ontario.
Buchanan points out one glaring contradiction in the government's plan.
I'm really surprised that they are relying so heavily on electric vehicle uptake.
Considering how the PCs got rid of the province's incentive program last year. And it shows. According to the latest numbers, electric vehicle sales are up in all provinces and territories by 93% in Quebec, 99% in Alberta, 174% in BC compared to the first quarter last year. But in Ontario, electric vehicle sales are actually down by 59%.
Is Ontario the only province where we've seen sales plummet?
That's true.
Under the previous government, drivers were eligible to get from $5,000 to $14,000 to buy a new environmentally friendly vehicle. But the program was scrapped, along with cap and trade.
The transportation sector accounts for a significant portion of our greenhouse gases, and in the case of electric vehicles, we have a technology that is readily available, that is popular, and that is in many cases higher performing than the gas equivalent. Consumers want it, so it represents, in my view, low-hanging fruit for any government that's really serious about fighting climate change.
The Environment Minister's office says provincial government subsidies for electric vehicles aren't needed and say they are on track for emissions targets by 2030. But according to Environmental Defence, that's not soon enough.
We don't have time to sit and think and delay and cancel. We only have time to take action.
Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
Some major headaches for commuters on Yonge Street early this morning. A water main break at Yonge near Shooter forced police to close the road this morning. Crews managed to shut off the flow, but there was a big mess left behind. By afternoon, repairs were well underway on the main and the damaged road. There's no word yet what caused the break. Ports Toronto took another step tackling litter in the harbour today. They're partnering with U of T's trash team to install 2 more C-bins.
I can tell you from a contamination standpoint, particularly here in Lake Ontario, we find microplastics in pretty much every organism that we sample. So these bins are effectively removing these plastics from potentially being exposed to the fish.
The city installed 2 bins at the Outer Harbour Marina in July. Each of the bins collected 2 kilograms of litter a day, things like bottle caps, grocery bags, and cigarette butts. The bins are designed to collect all kinds of trash, from large debris to microplastics to fuel and even oil. The new C-bins will be secured to a floating dock near the York Street slip. Ports Toronto hopes to eventually extend the project along the entire waterfront. Colette is back with our full look now at the forecast. I was kind of hoping to take the kiddo to a pumpkin patch this weekend, but now, I don't know, given your kind of like looming weather report, I'm not sure if we should be doing that.
No, you know what? You're going to be just fine. You're going to be just fine, Shannon. Don't do it Saturday morning, okay? And, you know, we want it to feel kind of fall-like, right?
True,
we want to put on some layers and that kind of thing if you're going to be in the pumpkin patch. There's going to be plenty of opportunities, and I'll walk you through where those might be, and you can all plan your weekend coming up. So slightly mild tonight in terms of our overnight temperatures. Still looking at mostly clear skies. And then another lovely day. Yes, another one. For Friday, things look really good. It's overnight Friday, and I mean way overnight into early Saturday morning when we're going to find these showers coming in, and they're going to linger through Saturday morning into early afternoon. That's why that's kind of not the time you want to be planning your outdoor activities. If you can work around that, you'll be doing pretty good. It's just, you know, preparing for what the temperatures will be, and I'll help you with that. Average high at this time of year is 15, and the low right around 5 degrees, just under. And again, here we are with another day. Yesterday was from 1976, and today another day where on this date in history there was snow in Toronto, almost a centimeter, and here we have sunshine and highs, you know, around 17 degrees. Now we sit at about 15. That's what we're looking at in Toronto. And again, I said it's a quiet night tonight, so the evening really looking beautiful. But this is the system that's going to be moving in. So this dome of high pressure, which has been our best friend all week, it will still be our BFF tomorrow. Then that's when we're going to have a little bit of an out. You know, it's a falling out. And so as that high pressure moves off, we'll see the clouds push into southwestern Ontario, some isolated showers tomorrow afternoon, more organized stuff coming in there in the evening, but you'll just see some clouds increasing for the GTA and then showers moving through towards early Saturday morning. By Saturday afternoon, I'd anticipate they'll be moving back out again. It's just that we're going to have to deal with the fact that we'll see some cooler temperatures and not the ones we've been seeing the last few days. Tomorrow, don't worry about it, 17 again for the high, and this is how it looks as we go into the holiday weekend. Yeah, we're talking about the temperatures coming down, 15 on Sunday. Monday, the coolest day, Shannon, 13.
We want that BFF back. But
yeah,
that's not too bad, right?
Okay. You know what? We're going to make up, I'm sure.
Okay. Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
As we head to break, here's a look at where the markets closed today. We'll be right back. 26 people have died and nearly 1,300 are suffering from vaping-related illnesses in the U.S., which may be linked to products containing THC, the active ingredient in cannabis. Next week, new cannabis products, including vape oils, will be legalized in Canada. Christine Burak has more.
Even pot activist Matt Oliver is unnerved by all the vaping-related lung illnesses in the U.S.
It's an awful thing, right? Like, I don't think that people are being warned about what's in the e-liquid.
Oliver's convinced legal dry herb isn't the problem. He thinks these currently illegal cannabis vape pens, oils, and e-juices are making people sick. To date, there's no clear culprit, but we do know 77% of those sickened in the U.S. vape THC, the chemical in cannabis that gets people high. And in this country, hundreds of new cannabis edibles, extracts, and oils will be legalized October 17th and on sale by the end of the year.
Right now, we don't know a specific product or substance or even a device that might be implicated.
Canada's top doctor says once cannabis vaping products are regulated, no additives will be allowed and health officials will know exactly what's in them, saying if there should be any issues or safety concerns, it's much easier to investigate.
Right now, we simply don't know enough about the dangers.
But American authorities say they're not sure that legal vape products sold by licensed stores are any safer, which is why some are asking, why is Health Canada legalizing products that are at the center of a public health crisis?
This isn't theoretical. People are dying, people are really sick. We need to press the pause button on this.
Based on what doctors are seeing, this respirologist says people should seriously question Health Canada's approach.
If it's okay to say that, let's release this, let's make this legal, and once we have a spate of cases, and maybe some people will die, we'll use that as a way to go back and trace and understand what the problem is. That is just not something that I think as Canadians we expect of our health regulatory agencies, and that's not something that I think the public should accept.
Many public health experts say if new cannabis vape products are to be legalized, there need to be stricter rules, including limits on THC concentrations.
That's really the discussion that should be happening around legalization, which means what are the products, how do we regulate them so consumers are going to have confidence in them and we minimize any risk. And quite frankly, we haven't achieved that yet.
Until then, vaping remains a high-stakes game of buyer beware. Christine Burak, CBC News, Toronto.
I'm Dwight Drummond at Mars Discovery District, getting ready for our big town hall tonight. Find out what I'm going to be talking to these young people about coming up.
We've been talking about it for weeks. Last night, CBC Toronto hosted Accent on Toronto. It is the 18th year we've celebrated our city's multicultural makeup through the lens of some of our top comedians. Here are some of our favorite moments.
I'm half Japanese and half white Canadian, which was a hot mix in the 90s, okay? In the 1990s, all right? I'll explain what I mean, okay? The other day I met a Chinese, Iraqi, Malaysian girl. Yeah. I can't compete in this game anymore, you understand? I'm like mixed race person 1.0, just getting obsolete here.
I'm half Latino, half Middle Eastern, which, if you're wondering, is too much rage and passion for one person. Too much. Too much.
I met a woman the other day. It was a weird exchange. I told her I have autism. She said, "No, you don't. You're doing great." Weirdly enough, not a lot of crime, not a lot of autistic criminals, because the crimes would be too specific. Cops would be like, "Who keeps knocking over strobe lights? This seems to be upsetting someone." This is like, all right, we're putting out an APB on a guy, broke into the ROM last night, corrected all of the Latin names for dinosaurs.
Hey, it's Dwight, and this is why I'm not hosting the show tonight. I'm at Mars Discovery District for our big election town hall. I left the tie at home. I'm wearing jeans because we're hanging out with young people, the millennials who have the power to change this election. There are now more millennials eligible to vote than their parents, the baby boomers, and we're going to be talking to them about getting involved. And we're going to be live streaming this event on Facebook. So you can join the conversation on CBC Toronto's Facebook or Twitter accounts where the event is being live streamed. Leave us your questions and comments and we will answer them. You can see the crew is getting ready for the big show tonight. I've got my Madonna mic on and I can't wait to hear from you.
Thanks, Dwight. Well, whoever wins the election will be Prime Minister, but not Canada's head of state. That title belongs to Queen Elizabeth. She's been Canada's monarch for more than 50 years now, but before she took the throne, she was Princess Elizabeth, and her first trip to our fair city is the subject of this week's Throwback Toronto.
The woman who would be queen visited Toronto this week in 1951, her first official visit to our country. Instead of arriving by ship, Princess Elizabeth and her husband, Prince Philip, flew to Canada, a first for a royal visit. Air Force members kept control of large crowds. Mayor Hiram McCallum showed the princess around City Hall, including a stop at the Book of Remembrance. And where else would Princess Elizabeth stay but the Royal York Hotel? Their Canada tour also brought the royals to Windsor. They toured the riverfront and got a salute from Detroit fireboats. Their Majesties even visited both the Ford and Chrysler plants in Windsor.
Colette's back now with our last look at the forecast, talking about enjoying the next kind of, 24, 48 hours?
Yeah, 24.
Okay.
I mean, I hope we enjoy the 48.
Yes.
It's just the weather changes
Right.
a little bit on us, right? So we come out of the pattern that we've been in and things fall apart a little bit into Saturday, but it won't last forever. This is how it looks for the next 24, though. Overnight tonight, we're talking about clear skies and 8 degrees, and then tomorrow we're going to see 17. Lots of sunshine, still a little above seasonal. It's still okay even tomorrow evening. It's as we get into the wee hours of Saturday morning, Shannon, we're going to start to see some showers move in. They should have cleared out by the time we get to Saturday afternoon. It's just that we're going to notice our temperatures come down a little bit as well. As we go into the holiday weekend, it'll feel very much like Thanksgiving.
Yeah, so hot apple cider, maybe, something like that.
And a few extra layers, and you're good.
And you're good, yes. Well, that's our show for tonight, but over at the Mars Discovery District on College Street, the conversation is just getting started. That's where our Dwight Drummond is. He's hosting an election panel focusing on why young people have all the power this election. Join us if you can. It gets started in half an hour. Watch us on Facebook, Twitter, or CBC Gem. We'll see you back tomorrow. Have a great night.